Aron Ra. We are at the Faithless Forum here in Austin, Texas, and having a blast. I'm really enjoying this. Next year, I hope everybody comes and joins us. We have a much larger crowd, that we can have here, because this is where it all really comes together. People look at you and they say, this man right here, he looks like he's cold and he's hardened to the world. And I have to say, after, obviously I've known you online and I knew you were this giant teddy bear. Don't get me wrong. Don't mess with the teddy bear, but you're definitely not what people would think of you as based on appearance. They would think, oh, he's anti-God to the point that he's just this hater and he hates people or something. Tell us what's really in your, if I can get emotional, because you're always intellectual, what is your real deep down emotional answer to that? Like, how do you really feel about things?
It confuses me when people think I'm a hater, because I've always said I've put up posts and things that I don't. And not only do I not advocate hate, I advocate against hate, and almost all of our religious or political division is based on hate, whether it's. And I'm not even talking about hatred of race, although that's a factor too. I mean, it's when we're talking about binary categories of us against them, where you can't describe someone as if they're not right wing, then it's not just that they're left wing. That liberals are also left wing, and everybody's a communist, and everybody I don't like is a radical leftist, because you can't say leftist without calling them radical left, because you got to demonize everybody. And so there's an awful lot of these kind of judgments, black or white judgments against people. There's no kind of concept of nuance, right? Which is one of the problems that we have, because, I mean, you have people who see things in black and white terms, and so they're very single-minded, whereas those who do see nuance are all a herd of cats. So they're all going in different directions, and maybe we agree on one thing, but it's not enough our side doesn't become single-minded, one-issue voters. So that's to our disadvantage. If we could concert against, a common enemy, which is trying to make everyone their enemy, if we could respond that way, we would dominate, but we don't, because everybody has their own varying opinions and such. I don't hate anything except injustice. And now, by extension, that means lies. I put lies in the same category as violence. That lies and violence are things that you might resort to in a last ditch of self-defense, perhaps, but may not be excusable even then. And I mean, violence is okay when it becomes a sport, and lies are okay when you're an actor. But otherwise,
I think I get what you're trying to get at.
Yes, I mean, misleading someone is hurting them, because they're going to make decisions based on the wrong information, which means they're going to make the wrong decisions. And ultimately, I mean, it's what you love that endears you in someone else's memory. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'll remember that some person you knew from your past hated this or that, but the thing that really sticks out is what they love.
Right.
So that whenever you see that thing that they love, you think of that person. And that's what I focus on. People always accuse me of arguing for what I don't believe in. I believe in truth, and I mean actual truth. I'm not talking about like when every lie is sold as the truth. Everybody says that their bullshit story is the truth with a capital T. I think the truth is what the facts are, what we can show to be true, not whatever else we assume or imagine beyond or instead of that. So if you can show me the truth of it, then you can call it truth. But if you can't, then you have to admit that there's no truth to it.
And just to probe deeper, I know the answer to this, and I could respond, but I'm kind of I'm coming from the antagonist side to ask you, why does that matter? Why don't you let people just live in their fairy tale? Why can't we all just, you see where I'm going with this?
I've had people tell me exactly that. Why does it have to be true before I believe it? These may be what the facts are, but I prefer to believe this.
Right.
Hearing someone say that is just an admission that you don't care what the truth is. You're going to lie and say that your lie is the truth. And let the Bible be the only source of truth in our world. Let everything else be a lie. So you are literally rejecting reality to live in an alternative fantasy, right, of pure imagination.
And what are the repercussions of that?
Again, you're making bad decisions because you're doing it on false information. And it's not just that. Intrinsically, if you have these faith-based beliefs in any kind of religiosity, children raised with faith-based beliefs will be less able to distinguish fact from fiction. So they really don't know what's real and what isn't. Well, what is psychosis? You don't know what's real and what isn't. So do we want a nation full or a planet full of psychotics? That's what you ultimately get. And it is, all religious thinking is binary. You don't have, it's either black or white. There's no concept of gray, and we live in a spectrum of color where there are other things to consider. But religious thinking is very, very limited. And it's not just inhibiting, it's prohibiting. So that people are forced in, it's all about control. So they're forced into these norms where they're ashamed to deviate, they're ashamed to think. If any independent thought is, when you have a belief system, you have required beliefs and prohibited beliefs. I'm advocating free thought. So I don't have a belief system, much as they want to project, they want to pretend that the lack of religion is somehow a religion, that the rejection of faith is somehow a faith. Because they know that their position is so bad that the only way they can defend themselves is if they can try to stick us with their stink. And cannot admit that what I believe is indicated as a consequence of these evidence that imply this. And if you can show me that that's not the case, okay, well then that's not the case. But you can't just tell me because your opinion is, or you feel it in your heart, show me what the reality is. And they can't. And they desperately want to believe something. I want to understand things, and that means improving my understanding. So it's not enough to just assume a position and then do the confirmation bias where I will accept or acknowledge only those things that seem to indicate my conclusion and reject everything that stands against me. That's no good for me, because why would I want to believe something that's not even evidently true? You don't have to prove me wrong. If the reason that I have come to a conclusion is indicated by this fact, this is the only explanation. This fact implies this, and so I have to assume. I don't have a choice in the matter. I'm directed obligately to accept this conclusion as indicated by this fact. If that fact turns out to be erroneous, as has happened a few times in my life, where I find out that there's a scientific evidence for whatever, and then I find out that was a bogus study, or that it was unreliable, or it was a hoax, or whatever, you don't have to prove me wrong. If I can't show the truth of that claim, it's no longer truth, and it's gone from I can't believe that anymore.
Right.
You have to be able to show the truth of it. I will not believe anything on faith. Faith is the most dishonest and inherently auto-deceptive position it is possible to have, because you assert baseless speculation as if it's a matter of fact, which is already a lie, pretending to know things nobody even can know, which is again a lie. And then you refuse to admit when you're wrong. And that's what apologetics is, making up any excuse to justify or minimize or rationalize or otherwise dismiss and ignore any and all evidence against your position. How could anything be more dishonest than faith? And dishonest is injustice. So I don't hate God, except by the extension that I hate injustice. Lies are included in injustice, and God is a lie. So it's very indirect.
Yeah. So this brings me to something, trying to tap into the believer's mind here. Suppose you're right, Aron. I'm trying to, what do you call it? Funnel the Christian in me out, right? Suppose you're right, and there is no God. What you're saying is true, and science has our answers. And for the things we don't know, we shouldn't posit God. We should remain agnostic on those particulars until we have better evidence, until we have proof.
Unexplained means unexplained. It doesn't mean explained by magic.
and suppose all of this that you're saying is actually the case. I'm afraid, let's say, that nihilism, or I'm afraid of being alone in the world, in the universe, that when I die, nothing will be there. I'll have no memory. There'll be no experience. I won't have any of this. How do you answer that emotional? You get where I'm going. We all
I can't
had
even
this.
relate to it.
When you were deconverting, you never had that experience?
I never had. No.
You get where I'm coming from, though. Even if you don't relate, you know.
Yeah, other people have this need and this fear that I have no connection to. I don't need to exist forever. I mean, and I was in a movie that this Christian pastor made. It's called My Week in Atheism. And in the week that movie came out, I got curious about this guy, and I look up his channel. I get to see him giving his sermon to his own congregation, in which he proved to be the most nihilistic person I've ever seen in my life. And I don't mean that with a proper definition that an actual nihilist would use. Right. I mean that in the critics of nihilism, their derogatory definition. He was the most nihilistic. He said that if he doesn't still exist 5 billion years from now, then his life had no meaning. He has to still exist for always and forever for anything to matter ever at all. Mm-hmm. He said to his own congregation, he admitted that he was completely irrational. He admitted that he believes these things without any reason. He's telling his own congregation this. And that if what we do today doesn't matter 5 billion years from now, mm-hmm. then it doesn't matter now. So it doesn't matter. Love means nothing. He said if he can't continue to exist for absolutely forever, if he can't be the reason that the universe exists, if he can't have his absolute arrogance eternally, then there is no reason to minimize suffering or to prolong life. How negatively nihilistic can anything get? I mean, and this is what, by his own admission, to believers. Mm-hmm. So I played his sermon in one of my presentations. Yeah. Tell me what I don't believe. Listen to this guy.
So one more thing on you. This is your go-to. I absolutely am in love with your series on Lies in the Textbook. I canceled my subscription in Netflix just to go. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, I can listen to you just pick apart the crazy stuff that I used to believe. I used to watch. Ken Hovind was, you're going to laugh, I actually believed what he said 10, 12 years ago. I was a young earth creationist Christian, and I believed that he was trying to be factual with the Bible, right? He was trying to let the Bible be the answer, though, right? So the question is, what is this motivation you have for evolution? Is that like the biggest niche you see that needs to be really addressed? And sure, there's theistic evolution that people like to try and posit. Well, you can see all the natural processes, but in the metaphysical, the motivation on keeping life to survive is God. It's just moving the goalposts. But the question I have is, what do you see with your mission in evolution? Is that like one of the biggest things you see need to be hammered?
I don't usually critique just general
theism.
Theism, yeah. Because if you have an almost deistic concept of God, there's little. It just becomes a purely philosophical argument, and philosophers never win discussions. I mean, I think that Hume overturns. What the fuck's his name from 1200s? People would tell me all the time that they would tell me that I'm a logical positivist. Why? Because you believe in verificationism, but I don't believe in verificationism, and so therefore I'm not a logical positivist. But you're going to classify me that way anyway, and you're going to tell me that, and it doesn't matter that I know what it is and that I'm not that, and you're not going to listen to me not being that, and you're going to tell me, well, that's so 20th century, but you're still worshiping Aquinas, and I'm sorry. Hume counters that, and he's from the 18th century, right? So why is Aquinas not outdated? Logical positivism is more recent than Hume. Why is that bad and this isn't? Mm-hmm. I don't like philosophical arguments. What I like is an established fact. When you say there is no transitional species, and I can show you literally hundreds of them, I can show you the definition of what a transitional species is, and then I can show you hundreds of examples that exactly fit that definition. When you say there's no beneficial mutations, again, I've got dozens and dozens of positively identified beneficial mutations. This is a frameshift mutation, this part of the genome, this is how it was ascertained, they know what the effect is, they know how it occurred. But people will deny that because they have to make believe in something that in some cases they know isn't even true.
Mm-hmm.
One of my oldest friends told me that I'm Christian because I like to believe that, not because I think it's true. But if they're making statements, in Kent Hovind you brought up, everything he says is wrong. Everything is immediately demonstrably wrong. What he says, the Bible says. If you take the whole paragraph, no, it actually is implying something else. And when he says that atheists believe that we came from a rock, when nobody will say that. Nobody, no professor, no textbook, nothing ever. And then if you find rationalizing excuses to try to come up with some way that we are technically from rocks, can't find one. But he's going to continue telling that lie every day of his life, knowing that it is a lie, because it's made him millions of dollars. And it got him hundreds of acres on his retirement home that he has built by slaves that don't know they're slaves. But wait, I've got to throw something else in there.
Yeah,
just
please.
one other tack on. I've seen people say, like one example, there was a pastor that said that if somewhere in the Bible it said that 2 + 2 = 5, that he wouldn't question that. He would simply believe it, just accept it as true, and then try to figure it out. Well, that's mathematic proof, absolute proof that the Bible is wrong, if that were the case.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. You're admitting that absolute proof that the Bible is wrong can be ignored. How can we reason with you then?
You can't. So final question I have, I was going to ask this yesterday at your particular one when Thomas said, hey, if you have any questions, ask, but I was like, I'm going to hold it. How do I phrase this? So I have a lot of people that are Orthodox Christians that will contact me and say, the atheist you have on your channel is a fundamentalist and you're a fundamentalist. And what they're trying to say is the arguments you guys are dealing with biblically are always fundamentalist arguments. So you let go of your faith for wrong reasoning. So for example, Kent Hovind. Let's give the guy the benefit of the doubt here for a moment. I know it's hard, especially after everything you've debunked. But the guy is like stuck, let's say, completely stuck, brainwashed, Kool-Aid drinking. Let's say he found out he was wrong in his own mind to the point where he was convinced. I know you might think he is wrong and he knows it and he's just doing it for money, but let's just say...
I've got him on corners. I've got him cornered at times where there's nothing, he can't even acknowledge that I made the point.
Right.
So he just doesn't let anybody know that he's seen it. And then it just says that he didn't watch it. I already know that he did.
Yeah. So let's suppose he sees it and he knows it and he actually wakes up. Imagine the guy says, Aron, you're right. I was wrong this whole damn time. And then an Orthodox Christian comes in and says, your whole, how you've read the Bible, how you've understood Jesus, all of this stuff is absolutely wrong. The reason you become an atheist now, Kent, imagine that happened, is because you didn't really know what the hell you were reading. You weren't doing this right. And I have this happen a lot. The Orthodox guys come in and go, you weren't listening, magisterium, allegory, metaphor, some of it is myth. We've already been accepting this as a church.
It's all literal except when it's metaphorical, and those will vary depending on who you're talking to. What was literal to me, or what was metaphorical when you're talking to me, becomes literal when you're talking to the next guy the next day.
Right.
I've noticed that happening too.
This is the problem too. This is getting to the heart of one of the problems I see all the time. I gotta give the fundamentalist some serious credit. And here's why. When they come to see their worldviews all jacked up, they actually begin to question everything. They're not teeter-tottering, lukewarm doubters, if you will. They're really going, okay, if this is false, what else is? They're not moving the goalpost to go, that's allegory. God didn't actually kill 42 children. That's an allegory about the sun, moon, and the stars, or something to keep their faith intact, to keep their God protected, to hold on to their book. would you agree with me in saying that the fundamentalist who actually has that radical black and white exchange and recognizing, let me be critical of everything, is actually taking a further step in a positive direction than the guy who sees the problem with fundamentalism, maybe he's always been raised that way, or recognized it, then went into this wishy-washy, I believe in this, and then just gets real comfortable, complacent, and never actually goes to be critical?
Like I said, with the philosophical argument, you can never win.
Right.
But when it's a statement of fact, and that's where your fundamentalists are, where one chink in the armor and everything collapses. The whole house of cards comes down. I get emails and various types of messages almost daily, and have for years, almost daily, from people. I got one today from people thanking me for having walked them out of their delusion, which more than anything else is why I keep doing what I'm doing. And it's easy to do with fundamentals because it's just a statement of fact. There are no transitional species or what have you, right? So here's the example. And one of my favorite arguments is when people say that, well, the Bible says blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. Show me. Well, I don't know where. Well, I know, because it doesn't say that. And it doesn't say that until you can show me that it says that. And you can't show me that it says that because it doesn't say that. But I tell you what it does say. And then they'll tell me, no, the Bible doesn't say that. Yeah, it does say that. And this is where it says it. Well, that may be what it says, but that's not what it means.
Yes. Yes. Good point. Yeah. I deal with this all the time as well with what you're discussing here. Aron, I'm really proud to be part of the team and just seeing what you're doing you've been doing it for a long time. Remember, I used to hate you as a Christian. I knew about you 10 years ago. Not hate you, but there is a hate. And you want to act like, well, I hate what he's saying, but really I had this animosity.
Did you love the sinner?
Oh, I definitely didn't. Even though, and by the way, at my Calvinist state, I was able to go to that place in my mind where I was like, well, if God's like this, then I'm one of his chosen. I hate what God hates. And God does not just hate the sin. Calvinists admit God doesn't throw the sin in hell. God throws the people. God hates people.
Oh, God doesn't throw the people. The people voluntarily go to this place that God set up under these conditions that God set up. But somehow God is not responsible for the suffering that Jesus himself said he would deliver personally.
Right.
But the Bible doesn't say that. Well, the Bible doesn't mean that.
This is why I love what you do, because you take it out of the fantasy land of all that and you say, okay, let me show you how we came from fish. And it's like, dude, this is amazing because there's real evidence, and I'm more interested. I'm going to end on this note. I'd love to get your final comments. I'm more interested in the story, because we all love a story, but the real story of how we came to be, not the myth. And I think we connect deeper when we realize we came from the same thing than pretending classes and God chose and divided a holy race and a non-holy race, a chosen seed and a non-chosen seed. We all came from water.
Yeah. So God has chosen people, and everybody that writes a new book of scripture says that they're the people God chose. So originally it was the Jews, and then the Christians became the anointed ones, and so that they're however they identify themselves as anointed, whatever their ethnicity. Then the Arabs come up with the Quran, and now they're the chosen ones. And those despicable Jews who got lost on their way, and the Bible is all corrupted, and Jesus is now a prophet of Islam, just appropriating everything.
Then you have Baha'i. So then you have there's always something. You rock, man. Thank you so much once again. Any final plugs you'd like to make?
Oh no, not at the moment. I'm doing a series that I love, that is countering an apologetics outfit, Genesis Apologetics. I'm having so much fun with that. I think it's insidious that you have lesson plans designed for kids that are designed to mislead kids. And that these people cannot admit fact. You can corner them all you want to. They can't admit a fact. And when I wrote the book, Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, what I mean by foundational is it's not just that the belief is based on a falsehood, but that these particular falsehoods are things that the believer cannot remain a believer and cave to this.
Right.
When you come to the dichotomy that one is either, my first foundational falsehood, that one is either a God-fearing young earth creationist, or that you're a satanic devil-worshipping. Did I get that?
Yeah, you're either for God or you're anti.
You're either a God-fearing fundamentalist Christian, or you're a satanic devil-worshipping atheist, which doesn't even connect. But you have to be on these two extremes. So and you have to reject God entirely, or you have to accept the Bible is literally true, that these are the only two perspectives you can have. And so people like Kent Hovind have many times called out Ken Miller, traditional Catholic, but understands evolution, because Kent Hovind can't allow for Ken Miller to exist, right? Because that just throws his whole dichotomy out. I could accept that there are fundamentalists, and it's relatively easy to prove a fundamentalist wrong and get them into a corner where they can't admit the fact. And if they can't escape either, then you get to see something interesting. You get to see a psychotic meltdown.
Wow.
I've seen that where grown adults turn into little children in panic because they know everybody's watching, they know everybody knows, and they can't admit it. It's disturbing to see.
It's amazing. It's like they don't have anything to go to in their mind, and they're stuck. Sad and also disappointing, but thank you so much.
My pleasure.